They say silence speaks louder than words, but nothing cuts deeper than being deliberately ignored, especially when you've poured your whole self into something, and the only response is a quiet dismissal masked behind polite smiles and redirected conversations. I didn't expect a celebration, but after 9 years of carrying the company's most profitable client on my back, I thought my salary proposal deserved, at the very least, a response. My name is Ashley Carter. I'm 46 years old, a senior account strategist at a mid-sized marketing agency in Chicago. Or at least I was. For nearly a decade, I managed XanderTech, a tech conglomerate responsible for over a third of our agency's revenue. I didn't just handle their business, I understood them. I translated their chaos into strategy, their vague ideas into market-ready launches. My role wasn't just to deliver results, it was to prevent disasters before they ever happened. But 6 months ago, everything began to shift. Quietly at first, subtly. It started when James was appointed as the new CEO. Young, sharp-suited, and disturbingly efficient, he made it clear during his first town hall meeting. Loyalty is not a business model. Optimization is. I felt it in my gut. This wasn't going to be good. Still, I kept my head down and did what I'd always done: over-deliver. In Q1 alone, I exceeded our retention goals by 183%. I negotiated a 7-figure renewal with XanderTech without outside legal support. And I trained 2 junior strategists, both of whom eventually got promoted. So when I sent James an email with a formal proposal to adjust my salary, I thought it was reasonable. It wasn't emotional. It wasn't demanding. It was backed by hard numbers and comparative data from our competitors. I hit send, took a deep breath, and waited. 1 week passed, then 2. The email remained unread. At first, I assumed he was busy. A new CEO has a lot to handle, but during a weekly team sync, his assistant Mia, an eager 20-something he hired fresh from grad school, joked offhandedly, "Oh, James said those types of emails aren't top priority right now." I smiled, nodded. But inside, I swallowed something bitter. Still, I followed up. I even offered to discuss it casually over coffee or during a team lunch. No reply. Not a "let's revisit later." Not even a no. Just air. And here's the thing. It wasn't about the money. It was about being seen, being acknowledged, being told, "Hey, we know your value." But instead, I became background noise in my own story. Then, one Friday morning, I walked into the conference room to find Mia in my usual seat. James gestured for me to sit 2 places down. "Mia's leading this one," he said. "Fresh energy." I laughed lightly, because what else was I supposed to do? But that was the moment I knew. I wasn't just being ignored. I was being replaced, silently, strategically. I left that meeting holding 2 things: my laptop and the first flicker of a plan. I didn't storm out that day. I didn't raise my voice or demand my seat back. That's not who I am. Instead, I watched as Mia fumbled through the meeting, reading from a script I had once written for her during her onboarding. Watched James nod with performative encouragement, as if her generic insights were some groundbreaking revelation. Watched as people glanced at me, not with sympathy, not with contempt, but with avoidance. The kind you give someone whose fate you don't want to share. That's when I realized. They already knew. The whispers, the quiet shift in responsibilities, the "Ashley will oversee" from the background comments during internal emails. It had all been happening slowly, so slowly that it didn't look like a betrayal until it was too late. But I wasn't broken, not yet. I stayed late that evening, not because I had work, but because I wanted space. At 7:42 p.m., the office was nearly empty. I sat at my desk, opened my inbox, and reread the salary proposal I had sent 6 months earlier. Still unread. The subject line stared back at me like a ghost. Performance-based compensation review, Q1 request. I hovered over the email, not to delete it, but just to remind myself I wasn't crazy. I had done everything right. I had delivered results, documented every win, even structured my proposal around company-wide KPIs. But what I hadn't done, what James couldn't stand, was play politics. And I was paying the price. Over the next few weeks, the changes became less subtle. A longtime client I had nurtured for 4 years, Delamere Imports, was reassigned to Mia. No conversation, no warning, just a calendar update that popped into my inbox with her name on the invite. I confronted James as calmly as I could. Was there a reason for the account shift? I wasn't looped in. He smiled without looking up. We're trying to build Mia's portfolio. She needs real-world accounts under her belt. I'm sure you understand. I do. I just hope the client does too. He chuckled. They'll be fine. It's just logistics. But I knew it wasn't logistics. It was a slow erasure. One task, one client, one seat at a time. That night, I cried in my car, not because I was weak, but because I needed to let it out somewhere that wasn't a boardroom. It wasn't just the professional insult, it was the message underneath it. You are no longer essential. And yet, I still showed up the next day, because something in me refused to let James decide when my story ended. I would not give him the satisfaction of watching me walk away defeated. If he wanted me gone, he'd have to say it to my face. And if he didn't, then I'd use every ounce of my experience to show him what a real strategist does under pressure. It was no longer just about the salary, it was about the principle. It was about reclaiming my voice, quietly, methodically, and waiting for the right moment to speak so loudly. He'd have no choice but to listen, and as fate would have it, that moment came sooner than I expected. It started like any other Monday. Overcast skies, cold coffee, and a stale meeting agenda waiting in my inbox. I didn't expect much. Just another round of buzzwords, KPI charts, and James pretending to inspire people he barely knew. But there was one line in the calendar invite that gave me pause. Company-wide Q3 alignment. All strategic team leads required. Except, I wasn't a team lead anymore. At least, not officially. Still, I attended. Of course I did. I wore my navy blazer, the one that made me feel like the professional I used to be, and walked into the conference room with a notebook, a pen, and just enough pride to keep my head up. The room buzzed with low chatter. Mia sat to James's left. She was glowing. New hair, new nails, new aura. Like someone who had been told she was the future. I took a seat in the second row. No one said anything, but I could feel it. That unspoken discomfort people get when they think you're not supposed to be there anymore. James opened the meeting with his usual visionary talk. Words like agile, synergy, and operational velocity floated in the air like confetti no one asked for. Then, about 15 minutes in, the tone shifted. We're entering a new phase, he said, clicking to a slide labeled Strategic Streamlining. It's time to reassess where we invest our energy and our resources. He glanced around, pausing for effect. And sometimes that means making hard decisions. Some people have been here a long time, and maybe they've done good work, but tenure doesn't guarantee alignment. I froze. No names were mentioned, but he didn't have to. His eyes flicked toward me for just a second too long. Then he said it. If anyone feels entitled to compensation just because they've been around for years, without adapting to the company's new direction, perhaps it's time they ask themselves whether this is still the right place for them. The room fell painfully silent. I felt every eye in the room shift toward me, some quick, some lingering. Mia adjusted her papers with a smirk so small, it was practically microscopic. And James? He just moved on to the next slide. Like nothing had happened. Too much. It was just too much. I sat there, swallowing every ounce of shame, anger, and disbelief that tried to rise in my throat. How dare he? After everything I gave, after every client I saved, every late night, every loss I absorbed quietly to protect the company, this is what I got? I felt my face flush, my vision blur. but I didn't flinch. I stayed until the end of the meeting, took notes like nothing happened, and walked out with the same calm posture I'd entered with. But inside, I was done. No more emails, no more reminders, no more asking to be seen. James wanted me gone without firing me. He wanted to degrade me until I left on my own, to save himself the cost and the accountability. Fine. But if I was going to leave, I'd do it on my own terms. And I'd make sure it meant something. That night, I didn't cry. I didn't vent to a friend or rage scroll through job listings. I researched. I reviewed old client contracts, studied clauses, traced the relationships I'd built over the years, especially with XanderTech. I pulled up every email thread, every milestone deck, every thank you message that had ever come from their executive team. And somewhere around 2:14 a.m., I found what I didn't even know I was looking for. An email from 6 months ago, from XanderTech's VP of Strategy, Marlene Tate. It had ended with this line: "Ashley, if you ever feel this agency no longer values your brilliance, call me directly. We'd be lucky to have you." I nearly dropped my laptop. It felt like someone had thrown me a life raft in the middle of an ocean I didn't know I'd been drowning in. Not only was I not forgotten, someone saw me, truly saw me. And not just someone, XanderTech. I didn't respond to her right away. I needed to think. I needed to plan. But the fire inside me? It was no longer about escaping humiliation. It was about orchestrating my exit, intentionally, intelligently, and making sure that when I walked out, it wouldn't just be me leaving the building. It would be the heartbeat of their biggest client, walking right behind me. It took me 3 days to respond to Marlene's email. Not because I wasn't tempted, not because I was unsure, but because I wanted to be intentional. I wasn't looking for rescue. I was preparing for leverage. On the third evening, I sat down at my desk, hands shaking just slightly, and typed, "Hi, Marlene. Your message meant more than you know. I'd be open to a conversation. Strictly informal for now. Let me know when might be a good time. Ashley." I hit send, leaned back, and exhaled so deeply it felt like I was releasing 6 months of swallowed pride. To my surprise, she replied within 20 minutes. "Tomorrow at 11 a.m. I'll send a link." That fast? I was shocked, nervous, but also relieved. Maybe I wasn't invisible after all. The next morning, I dialed into the call 5 minutes early. I wore a soft gray blouse and a calm, neutral smile. The kind that says, "I'm here, but I'm in control." Marlene appeared on screen with the same direct warmth I remembered. "Still keeping everyone in line over there?" she asked, half joking. I smiled. "Trying. It's been a season." She didn't press. Instead, she offered something unexpected. "Let me get to the point. XanderTech's been reviewing its agency partnerships. We've noticed a decline in consistency, and frankly, we missed the way things used to run when you were leading the charge." I felt my breath catch. Was this happening? "We've been discussing internalizing part of our strategic operations," she continued. "If you're open to exploring a leadership role in-house, well, I think we could offer you the environment and recognition you clearly deserve. Too good to be true, too perfect, too validating." I almost didn't believe it. But it was real. I didn't give an immediate yes. I asked questions. I negotiated lightly. But deep down, I already knew. I was walking through this door, not running, not fleeing, walking with purpose. Later that afternoon, I sat in my car, staring out the windshield, stunned. Was this how it felt to be truly seen again? I couldn't remember the last time. The next step came naturally. I gathered records, emails, files, campaign archives, everything that showed the direct correlation between my strategies and XanderTech's growth. I didn't steal anything proprietary. I didn't break rules. I just prepared to show the full picture, from my side pod. Meanwhile, the agency continued its freefall in silence. Delamere Imports had gone suspiciously quiet. Another account, Greylight Labs, requested a Q4 strategy rework after recent internal confusion. James, of course, blamed market turbulence, but I knew better. And then the message came. XanderTech was terminating its contract. No warning, no explanation, just a clean, cold email from procurement. The office exploded. Mia was pulled into emergency meetings. James was seen pacing the hallway with red eyes and a clenched jaw. And me? I typed quietly at my desk, lips pressed together in a line that only I knew was a smile. Too satisfying, too poetic. They had no idea what was coming next. The Monday after XanderTech pulled their account was silent in all the wrong ways. No urgent meetings, no fake optimism, just a thick, anxious stillness that hung in the air like fog that wouldn't lift. People walked slower. Whispers replaced greetings. James didn't make his usual round with coffee and that artificial grin. He stayed holed up in his office like a man waiting for a sentence to drop. The loss wasn't just financial. It was symbolic. XanderTech was our crown jewel, our anchor client. Without them, everything shook. But while the office panicked in slow motion, I felt oddly peaceful. Maybe because I had finally stopped waiting for someone else to validate my worth. Or maybe because, for the first time in months, I held the upper hand. That afternoon, a call came. Not from Marlene this time, but from XanderTech's chief operating officer himself. He didn't waste time. Ashley, we've reviewed the leadership structure for our new Strategic Client Innovation Division, he said. And the decision was unanimous. We want you to head it. I sat frozen. You'd build the department from scratch, hire your own team, full authority, reporting directly to the C-suite. Remote work, flexible terms, and, of course, a salary that reflects what you've earned. My heart pounded. Not just a new job, a clean slate. A vote of confidence so loud it drowned out every moment James ever tried to make me feel small. When the call ended, I sat in silence, laptop still open, the office murmuring faintly around me. But none of it touched me. Too good to be true? No, too long overdue. I emailed my acceptance later that evening, short, professional, but bursting with quiet triumph. The next morning, as if on cue, James emerged from his cave. His usual confidence was gone. He looked strained, tie slightly askew, smile a bit too tight. A man trying to hold something together with duct tape. He stopped by my desk and asked, "Got a minute?" I followed him to the boardroom. He shut the door and turned slowly, like he was choosing his words with surgical precision. So, XanderTech, do you know why they pulled out? I met his eyes. I assume it wasn't the weather. He gave a humorless laugh. Come on, Ashley. I'm not part of their leadership team, I replied calmly. Not yet. His eyes widened. So they did reach out. I didn't answer. I didn't need to. He exhaled sharply, pacing once. Look, I know things got tense. I was trying to push for a leaner model, fresh talent, you know? Maybe I overlooked some dynamics. But if you have any insight, any ideas on how we might re-engage with them, I'd really value your help. Unbelievable. After all the dismissals, the silent erasures, the public shaming, now he wanted my help? I tilted my head. 6 months ago, I sent a proposal outlining what XanderTech needed to feel valued and supported. You never opened it. He swallowed. You also reassigned my accounts, undermined my role, and promoted someone with zero experience to replace me, publicly. I miscalculated, he admitted. We both know you were central to that relationship. I stood slowly. Not am, he blinked. I've accepted an offer from XanderTech, I said evenly. I'll be leading their new strategy division, effective immediately. James went pale. You're serious? Dead serious. A long silence stretched between us. His hands clenched at his sides. You're making a mistake. No, I said, meeting his gaze without flinching. You did. And I left, not just the room. The building. The chapter. As I walked past the glass doors for the last time, the receptionist gave me a puzzled look. Heading out early? I smiled. Something like that. Because I wasn't just heading out. I was stepping up. And behind me, the fallout was only beginning. I didn't clear my desk. There wasn't much left anyway. Over the past few months, my workspace had been slowly stripped down. First by accident, then by design. No family photos, no thank you cards, no framed certificates. It was as if my identity had already been erased long before I gave notice. Still, I paused before leaving. I glanced around the office one last time. The hum of the copier, the clack of keyboards, the tension you could slice with a knife. No one knew I was walking away for good. And I liked it that way. I didn't want applause or pity. I didn't want a farewell party in the break room with a sheet cake and a generic card signed by people who hadn't looked me in the eye for months. I wanted this ending to match the silence that had led me here. I pressed the elevator button and waited. As the doors opened, I heard someone call out behind me. It was Mia. Ashley! I turned in slowly. She approached, hesitating. Are you leaving? There was a flicker of something in her voice. Not guilt, not remorse, just uncertainty. Like the sudden realization that maybe, just maybe, she wasn't invincible. I am, I said. Calm, unbothered. Her eyes widened. So it's true. You're joining XanderTech? I didn't confirm. I didn't need to. The rumor mill had already done its job. She shifted awkwardly. Well, good luck. You deserve it. That surprised me. Not because I needed her approval, but because I never expected she'd have the grace to admit it. Thank you, I said. Then I stepped inside the elevator and let the doors close on everything I used to tolerate. As I walked through the parking garage, the air felt different, lighter, sharper. I hadn't realized how much weight I'd been carrying until it was finally gone. No more begging to be heard. No more performing for people who had already made up their minds. No more shrinking myself to make room for someone else's ego. I drove home in silence. No music, just the soft rhythm of tires on pavement and the steady beat of my own thoughts. When I arrived, I poured a glass of wine, opened my laptop, and logged into my new email account. ashley.carter@xandertech.com. What a moment! There it was. A new beginning. A clean identity. And this time, one that couldn't be rewritten by someone else's narrative. The welcome email sat at the top of my inbox. We're thrilled to have you on board. Let's build something exceptional together. I leaned back, eyes stinging. Not from sadness, but from something far more unfamiliar. Joy. Real joy. Because for the first time in a long time, I wasn't surviving. I was starting over. And this time, on my terms. Still, I knew the story wasn't over yet. James would learn soon enough just how deep my impact had run. The ripples hadn't stopped with XanderTech. Other clients were beginning to ask questions. Some had reached out to me directly. And the company I left? They were about to feel the long shadow of every decision they made to silence me. 3 weeks into my new role, I got an unexpected call. It was from one of our former clients at the agency, Graylight Labs, a CMO I had once helped through a brutal product launch fiasco. Hey, Ashley, he said. Word is you've made a move. Congratulations. Honestly, we're thinking of doing the same. I smiled softly, already knowing what he meant. They weren't just calling to say hello. They were following the work, following me. Within days, 2 other clients, both long-standing, had reached out. Not with outrage or complaints, but with curiosity. Where did you go? Would you consider consulting? Could we talk? I didn't make promises. I just listened. And with every call, I felt it. The legacy they tried to erase was still very much alive. Meanwhile, I'd heard through back channels that things at the agency had gone from bad to worse. Clients were backing out of Q4 plans. New business pitches were falling flat, Internal staff turnover had quietly doubled. Mia had moved to another team, less client-facing. And James? Well, he'd gone silent on LinkedIn. Too poetic, really. I didn't gloat. That's not who I am. But I did reflect. Because here's the truth no one likes to say out loud. When you treat people like they're disposable, you teach them to build an exit plan. And when you push the right person far enough, you don't just lose them, you lose everything they protected without you ever realizing it. I wasn't perfect. I made mistakes. I stayed longer than I should have. I tolerated more than I had to. But I walked away with my dignity intact, and a new chapter already unfolding. I used to think power came from titles. Now I know it comes from something quieter, deeper, knowing your worth, holding your line, and walking away when it's time. Have you ever been overlooked, dismissed, or made to feel like your loyalty meant nothing? You're not alone, and you're not powerless. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is stay silent, work smart, and let your exit speak volumes. So I want to hear from you. Have you ever walked away from a place that stopped seeing your value? What did it cost? And what did you gain? Share your story in the comments. Someone out there might need to read it more than you know. Let's remind each other, we don't disappear, we evolve.